Your current electricity bill for lighting your home could easily quadruple, or even more, becoming a major household expense. Picture highways across the globe humming with the continuous roar of delivery trucks at 4 a.m., just as intensely as they do at 4 p.m. on a weekday. Consider a world where the very phrase "I'm tired" is something you'd only hear someone say or feel yourself, perhaps once every 7 days. Vast industries like the ones producing millions of mattresses and bed frames annually would shrink to a tiny fraction of their size, while the global demand for coffee beans could plummet, fundamentally altering agricultural economies from South America to Southeast Asia. Number 15. The one big sleep becomes a sacred ritual. In a world where wakefulness stretches for 6 full days, the single day of sleep would transform far beyond a mere biological necessity. Would likely evolve into a significant, almost sacred, cultural event. Families might meticulously prepare for sleep day with established rituals, much like some currently prepare for a weekly day of rest or an important annual holiday. Special quiet zones could become commonplace in cities and residential areas, with strict noise ordinances enforced to ensure undisturbed slumber for everyone. Period leading up to sleep day might involve specific routines, perhaps consuming particular foods or drinks believed to enhance sleep quality, engaging in calming meditative activities, or finalizing any pressing tasks to ensure a mind free of worry. The mattresses and bedding that remain in use would probably be of exceptionally high quality. True luxury items designed for the perfect extended recharge rather than nightly use. Waking up after this prolonged sleep would be akin to a personal system reboot, a genuine fresh start to another long, active week. This weekly hibernation would become a great societal equalizer, a shared human experience meticulously planned for and deeply valued across all cultures and demographics. Children would be taught the profound importance of their sleep day from a very young age, internalizing it as a fundamental rhythm of life. Businesses, schools, and public services would universally recognize it, leading to a near global shutdown of all non-essential operations for that 24-hour period. The world, in a very real sense, would go collectively silent once a week, a planetary pause before the activity of the next 6 days resumed. The social implications for anyone who disrupted another's sleep day or who tried to operate a noisy business could be quite severe, enforced by community pressure as much as by law. Number 14. Your meal schedule could triple. With an additional 8 hours, roughly, of wakefulness each day, the human body's energy requirements would naturally increase. Instead of the typical 3 meals a day, people might find themselves consuming 5, 6, or even more distinct meals to fuel their extended periods of activity. The concept of breakfast, lunch, and dinner would likely persist, but be supplemented by several other named eating occasions. Imagine a second breakfast around mid-morning, a late lunch, or pre-dinner in the late afternoon, and perhaps a substantial night meal before the day finally wound down, if it ever truly did for many. This shift would have a massive impact on the food industry. Grocery stores would need to stock vastly more produce and products, and their opening hours would extend, many likely operating around the clock. Restaurants and cafes would see a continuous flow of customers, not just peaks at traditional meal times. Types of food consumed might also change. There could be a greater emphasis on easily digestible energy, sustaining foods. Portion sizes for individual meals might become slightly smaller, but the overall daily caloric intake would rise significantly. Kitchens in homes might be designed with more storage and larger refrigerators. Food delivery services would operate non-stop, catering to cravings and nutritional needs at any hour. The agricultural sector would face immense pressure to increase production to meet this heightened global demand, potentially leading to innovations in farming techniques and land use. The The sheer logistics of feeding a perpetually awake and active global population would be a monumental undertaking, reshaping supply chains and food distribution networks worldwide. Number 13. The energy grid under unprecedented strain. A world awake for 6 full days a week before a single day of rest would place an unimaginable burden on global energy grids. With lights blazing in homes, offices, and public spaces for significantly longer periods, electricity consumption for illumination alone would skyrocket. Add to this the energy needed for appliances, computers, manufacturing plants, and transportation systems running almost continuously, and the demand becomes staggering. Power generation would need to scale up massively. This could mean a proliferation of power plants of all types, fossil fuel, nuclear, and renewable, all working at maximum capacity. The push for new and more efficient energy sources would intensify dramatically, with huge investments poured into research and development for technologies like fusion power or advanced solar and wind capture. Blackouts and brownouts could become a common threat if the infrastructure couldn't keep pace with demand, leading to the development of sophisticated smart grids to manage power distribution more effectively and localized end businesses. The environmental impact of this increased energy production would be a constant concern, potentially accelerating the search for cleaner alternatives. Cities might glow brighter and longer than ever before, contributing to significant light pollution that could affect ecosystems and astronomical observation. Cost of energy would likely become a much more significant factor in household budgets and business operating expenses, influencing decisions from appliance purchases to industrial processes. The entire energy sector would be in a state of perpetual expansion and innovation, simply to keep the lights on for a world that rarely sleeps. Number 12. Crime patterns would mutate. With most of the population awake and active for nearly 144 hours straight each week, the nature and patterns of criminal activity would inevitably change. Traditional notions of crimes committed under the cover of darkness might become less relevant, as darkness would no longer equate to deserted streets or inactive businesses, while more people being out and about could act as a deterrent for some types of opportunistic street crime. The sheer extended period of wakefulness could also create new vulnerabilities. For instance, properties left unattended for short periods might still be targets, but the window of opportunity for burglars would shift according to when people took their single day of sleep. Law enforcement agencies would need to operate 24/7 at full strength, with no quiet overnight shifts. Surveillance technology, already prevalent, might become even more ubiquitous as a means of monitoring activity across the extended waking hours. White-collar crimes could see an increase in complexity as perpetrators would have more uninterrupted time to plan and execute schemes. Conversely, the constant activity might make certain clandestine operations harder to conceal. The types of crimes related to prolonged stress or exhaustion, if that became a factor despite the biological adaptation to less sleep, could emerge. Cybercrime would likely flourish with more people online for longer stretches, creating more targets and opportunities. The justice system, from policing to courts, would also need to adapt to a 24/7 operational model to process cases efficiently in a society that never truly stops. The rhythm of crime and policing would align with the new rhythm of life. 6 days of high alert and activity, followed by a brief lull. Number 11. The concept of downtime vanishes for many. In a society where the biological need for daily sleep is removed for 6 days a week, the cultural expectation of constant productivity or engagement could become overwhelming for many. Clear demarcation between work time, personal time, and rest time that daily sleep provides would blur significantly. While the extra hours could be used for leisure or personal development, there's a strong possibility that work demands would expand to fill much of that newly available time. Employers might expect longer hours, more projects to be completed, and near constant availability. Pressure to be always on, whether for work, social engagement, or personal improvement, could lead to a new kind of societal exhaustion, even if physical tiredness from lack of sleep isn't the primary driver. Finding moments for quiet reflection, for simply doing nothing, might become a deliberate and perhaps even rebellious act. The mental health implications of such sustained activity, without the natural reset button of nightly sleep, would be a major area of study and concern. Industries focused on stress reduction, mental wellness, and focus enhancement might boom, not because of sleep deprivation, but because of wakefulness overload. The very definition of a break would change. Coffee break might stretch into an hour, but it would still be a brief interlude in a very long continuum of being awake and active. The societal narrative might champion constant achievement and activity, making it difficult for individuals to opt out or seek genuine, unstructured downtime without feeling unproductive or out of sync with the rest of the world. Number 10. Parenting and childcare transforms. The dynamics of raising children in a world with 6 continuous days of wakefulness would undergo a radical transformation. For parents, the sheer amount of active parenting time would increase dramatically. Imagine a toddler's energy or a teenager's schedule for nearly 144 hours straight before everyone in the household finally sleeps. Childcare facilities, from daycares to schools, would likely need to operate for much longer hours, possibly even in shifts, to support working parents. The structure of the school day itself might change, perhaps incorporating more breaks, varied activities, or even allowing for flexible learning schedules to accommodate the extended wakefulness of both students and teachers. Family life could become more intense. On one hand, there would be significantly more time for shared activities, family meals, and bonding. On the other hand, the lack of daily respite that sleep provides could also lead to increased household stress if personal space and time are not carefully managed. The concept of a bedtime routine for children would shift from a daily occurrence to a weekly one, a much more significant wind-down process before the long sleep day. Toy and children's entertainment industries would boom, needing to provide engaging activities for vastly extended periods. There might also be a greater emphasis on teaching children self-regulation and independent play from a younger age, given the extended periods parents would be managing their own wakeful lives. The support networks for parents, whether formal or informal, would become even more crucial to navigate the marathon of a 6-day waking week with children. Number 9. Global travel gets an overhaul. With an extra 48 to 56 hours of usable wakeful time each week for most people, the patterns and possibilities of travel would expand significantly. Short weekend trips could become extended explorations. Imagine leaving for a destination on what used to be a Friday evening and not needing to think about returning until 6 days later, before the collective sleep day. This would make international travel for leisure much more accessible and common, even for shorter breaks, as the impact of travel time itself becomes less of a constraint on the overall trip duration. Airline train operators and bus companies would likely run more frequent services around the clock, catering to a populace that can initiate travel at almost any hour. Tourism industry would flourish, with destinations needing to provide attractions, accommodation, and services that cater to visitors who are awake and active for longer stretches. Red-eye flights might lose their specific connotation, as any flight time could be a normal active time for passengers. Business travel could also change. Long-haul trips for single meetings might become less justifiable if remote communication suffices, or conversely, business trips might become longer, incorporating more work and networking opportunities given the extended available time. The infrastructure supporting travel, airports, stations, highways, would be in near constant use. The demand for rental cars, hotels, and guided tours would increase, and these services would also adapt to a 24/6 operational model. The concept of a long vacation might even be redefined, as people could take more frequent substantial trips rather than saving up for one big annual holiday. Number 8. The housing market shift. Smaller bedrooms, bigger living spaces. If sleep only occurs once a week, the traditional design of homes and apartments could undergo a significant evolution. Bedrooms, primarily used for nightly sleep in our current world, might shrink in size or become multifunctional spaces. Why dedicate a large portion of valuable square footage to an activity that only happens 1/7 of the time? Instead, the emphasis in home design could shift towards larger, more versatile living areas, home offices, hobby rooms, and spaces for entertainment or exercise. The master suite might become a sleep sanctuary, a specially designed room for the weekly long sleep, perhaps with advanced soundproofing and light-blocking features, but other rooms currently designated as bedrooms could be repurposed. Kitchens might expand to accommodate more frequent meal preparation and consumption. With people spending more waking hours at home, there could be a greater demand for dedicated spaces for individual pursuits within the same household. Balconies, patios, and home gyms might become more standard features. The overall size of homes might not necessarily decrease, but the internal layout and anointing of space would reflect the new rhythms of life. In densely populated urban areas, the premium on space might lead to innovative designs for compact, highly efficient sleep pods or rooms for the weekly rest, while maximizing the communal and active areas of a dwelling. The furniture industry would also adapt, with fewer beds being sold, but perhaps more investment in high-quality, multi-purpose furniture for the expanded living spaces. Number 7. Binge watching takes on a whole new meaning. The entertainment industry, particularly streaming services and content creators, would find themselves in an unprecedented landscape, with audiences having an extra 6 to 8 hours of potential viewing time every day for 6 days a week. The demand for content would be immense. Binge watching an entire season of a show in one sitting is common now. Imagine having the capacity to watch several seasons or multiple movie franchises back to back without feeling the biological urge to sleep. Content production would need to ramp up significantly to keep pace. New formats might emerge: super long movies, miniseries with dozens of episodes, or interactive narratives designed to be consumed over many continuous hours. Gaming would also see a massive surge. Online primal games could have worlds that are even more persistently active, with players engaged for much longer sessions. Live events, like concerts or sports, could run much later into the night, or even through the night, knowing there's an audience ready and awake. Cinemas might offer marathon screenings as a regular feature. Challenge for creators would be not just producing more content, but also content that can sustain attention over these extended periods. Conversely, the sheer volume of available entertainment could lead to a different kind of fatigue, content fatigue, where choosing what to watch or play becomes a task in itself. The advertising model supporting much of this entertainment would also adapt, with more odd slots available throughout the vastly extended waking day. Number 6. Grocery shopping at 3 a.m. is normal. The rhythm of daily commerce would completely transform in a world awake for 6 days straight. Tasks that are currently squeezed into evenings or weekends, like grocery shopping, would spread out across the entire 24-hour cycle. Supermarkets and retail stores would likely operate 24/6, not just as a niche service in big cities, but as a standard business model everywhere. Imagine strolling down the cereal aisle at 3 a.m. on a Tuesday, and it being as normally stocked and staffed as it would be at 3 p.m. This would necessitate a huge shift in staffing, with multiple full shifts of workers required to keep businesses running smoothly around the clock. Delivery services for groceries, meals, and general goods would become even more integral to daily life, operating non-stop to meet demand at any hour. Concept of closing time would largely disappear from many sectors. Banks, post offices, and even government services might extend their hours significantly or offer more comprehensive online services accessible at any time. This constant commercial activity would fuel economic growth, but also require a vast workforce willing and able to work at all hours of the day and night, 6 days a week. Convenience for consumers would be unparalleled, but it would also mean that the quiet, still hours of the late night and early morning, as we know them, would cease to exist in most populated areas. The hum of commerce would be a near constant backdrop to life. Number 5. The redefinition of nightlife. The very term nightlife would become almost anachronistic, as life would be continuously active for 6 days, blurring the distinction between day and night activities. What we currently consider nightlife, bars, clubs, late-night restaurants, entertainment venues, would simply be part of the regular spectrum of available activities, potentially open and bustling at what we now consider 4 a.m., just as they are at 10 p.m. Peak times for these venues might shift or flatten out with a more consistent flow of patrons throughout the extended waking period. Cultural events like theater performances, concerts, and art exhibitions could have showtimes starting very late or even running through the traditional night hours. Cities would be illuminated and active around the clock, with public transportation needing to support this continuous movement of people. Types of entertainment might also diversify, catering to different moods and energy levels that people experience across a 144-hour waking cycle. Perhaps calm, ambient music venues would be popular in the very late night, which is still active time, while high-energy dance clubs operate at various points. The social aspect of going out would remain, but the time frame would be massively expanded. This would also impact staffing, security, and urban planning, as cities adapt to being truly 24/6 hubs of activity and social interaction before the collective weekly sleep day. Number 4. Education systems revolutionized. Educational institutions from kindergartens to universities would face a fundamental restructuring. With students and teachers awake and potentially alert for 6 full days, the traditional school day and academic year would likely be reimagined. Schools might operate on longer schedules, perhaps in shifts, or offer a wider array of courses and extracurricular activities to fill the expanded time. Pace of learning could accelerate, with more instructional hours available each week. University students could take on heavier course loads, potentially completing degrees in a shorter overall time framing. Alternatively, the extra time could be used for more in-depth, project-based learning, internships, or practical skills development. Concept of homework might change, as more learning could be done within the extended institutional hours. Adult education and lifelong learning would also see a boom, as people would have more waking hours to dedicate to acquiring new skills or pursuing academic interests outside of their work commitments. Libraries and research facilities would likely extend their hours to accommodate this constant quest for knowledge. Teachers and academic staff would also see their work patterns change, possibly with more flexible scheduling, but also the demand for sustained engagement over longer periods. The challenge would be to utilize the extra time effectively without causing burnout in students or educators, ensuring that learning remains engaging and meaningful across the prolonged waking week. The infrastructure of education, buildings, resources, technology would need to support this new, more intensive model. Number 3. Cities that literally never dim. In a society where most people are awake and active for 6 continuous days, cities would transform into perpetually illuminated, bustling hubs of activity. Quiet, dark hours of the night that most urban areas currently experience would largely vanish. Streetlights would blaze consistently, commercial signage would glow, and the windows of homes and businesses would radiate light at all hours. This constant illumination would contribute significantly to light pollution, potentially obscuring the night sky for vast swaths of the population and impacting nocturnal wildlife even more than it does today. Public transportation systems, buses, trains, subways, would need to operate at near full capacity around the clock to move people to and from work, leisure activities, and errands at all times. The soundscape of cities would also change, with the hum of traffic, conversation, and commerce becoming a near-constant presence. Maintenance and construction work, often done at night now to minimize disruption, might occur at any time or be confined to the single sleep day. Parks and public spaces might be designed with enhanced lighting to allow for safe use 24/6. The energy demands of such continuously active cities would be enormous, as discussed, further straining power grids. While this constant vibrancy could make cities feel more alive and accessible, it would also eliminate the natural period of quiet and relative stillness that night currently provides, fundamentally altering the urban experience. Number 2. A boom in hobbies and personal projects. The gift of approximately 48 to 56 additional waking hours each week per person would unleash an unprecedented wave of engagement in hobbies, personal development, and creative pursuits. After accounting for potentially longer work hours, individuals would still find themselves with a significant surplus of time. This could lead to a renaissance in arts and crafts, with people dedicating serious hours to painting, sculpting, writing, or learning musical instruments. Home workshops for woodworking, electronics, or car restoration might become common. Community centers and makerspaces would likely thrive, offering resources and camaraderie for these extended leisure activities. Language learning, coding, advanced gardening, amateur astronomy, gourmet cooking, the possibilities for deep dives into personal interests would be immense. Physical fitness could also see a surge, with more time available for elaborate workout routines, participation in sports leagues that can play at any hour, or endurance activities like ultramarathoning. The publishing industry might see a rise in demand for instructional books and specialized magazines. Online courses and tutorials on every imaginable subject would proliferate. This dedication to personal passions could lead to a more skilled, creative, and perhaps even fulfilled populace as individuals have the bandwidth to explore facets of themselves beyond their professional lives. The side hustle might evolve into a passion project that receives as much dedication as a primary job, simply because the time allows for it. Number 1. The 24/7 work cycle becomes standard. With the biological constraint of daily sleep removed for 6 days a week, the structure of work and the economy would fundamentally shift towards a 24/6 operational model. Many industries, particularly service, manufacturing, logistics, and healthcare, would adopt round-the-clock staffing as a matter of course, not just for essential services but for routine operations. The traditional 9-to-5 workday, 5 days a week, would likely become a relic of the past. Instead, work schedules might involve longer individual shifts or more numerous but shorter shifts spread across the continuous waking period. Productivity per worker could, in theory, increase dramatically due to the sheer number of available work hours. This could lead to significant economic growth, but also raise questions about work-life balance, even with more total waking hours. The concept of a weekend as 2 days off might be replaced by the single universal sleep day, with the preceding 6 days being potential workdays for many. Global businesses could operate with seamless continuity, ending off tasks across time zones without the current lulls caused by nighttime. The demand for labor to fill these extended hours would be immense, potentially altering employment landscapes and possibly requiring innovations in automation to supplement human workers. The gig economy might expand further, with people taking on various short-term jobs at different times throughout the long waking week. The lines between work and personal life, already blurred by technology, could dissolve almost entirely for some professions, as the expectation of availability and responsiveness extends across the vast majority of the week.